Good morning, everybody. I'm Lorne Rubis, and I know I'll get a formal introduction here from my wonderful hosts, Danielle and Chris, here in a minute, but I just want to, from the Okanagan Valley of British Columbia, Canada, say a hearty good morning. It's just before 7 in the morning here, and we're thousands of miles away from the Hudson Valley and the beautiful world you live in. But I feel like I have some connection to you here. We're kind of in a wonderful, those of you that might have traveled ever to this part of the world, we're in a area full of vineyards and orchards and great skiing, great water sports, and great outdoor living, very much a rural community in a lot of ways. A lot of proud tradition here, just like very much in so much of Columbia-Greene. And even though I want to just declare right from the beginning, so there's just no unmet expectations, that I am neither a fan of any of the New York, Philadelphia, Jersey, Boston, Baltimore, or neighboring areas, Buffalo, you name it, football fans, hockey fans, or baseball fans. So I just want to be clear where I stand on that. And I'm both an American and Canadian citizen. I've lived many years in the Northwest. So I got absorbed by Seattle football teams and baseball teams, even though they never win anything. Although Seattle, the Seahawks, as you know, ventured once and a couple of times made it once. Anyway, that's the whole. But you live in a beautiful part of the world, and I haven't been to the city for a long time, in and around the surrounding areas, and I really miss it. So I'm looking forward to travel, sort of getting back to some level of normality. But thank you for joining me this morning.
All right, well, it's 10:01. I think we should get started. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Columbia-Greene Workforce Roundtable. I'm Danielle Paleshi. It's pretty tough out there. The Great Resignation, the Great Reckoning, the Sansdemic. You can't throw a rock without hitting a business with a help wanted sign right now. Businesses need more than strategies. Your culture eats your strategies for breakfast. What can your business do to keep and attract employees? How can you make people want to work for you? Today's presentation is about solutions. Today, we have an expert on culture and the workplace to help. Our presenter has spent more than 40 years working to advance people and organizations throughout North America and Europe. He has held executive positions driving culture and business transformation at several companies, including a Fortune 50 company, as the Chief People Officer at ATB Financial, and as the Vice President of Operations for the Los Angeles Kings. He's the co-founder of Belongify and teaches building organizational cultures at Harvard School of Extension. It is my very great honor to introduce Mr. Lorne Rubis. Lorne, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. We're so excited.
Daniel, thank you for reaching out to me. It's a real privilege to come and hang out with you and Chris and your colleagues there in Columbia-Greene. And I want to congratulate you both on your leadership, what you're doing to be supportive, to facilitate and advance and support all the community around the workforce in your two wonderful counties is remarkable. And I really applaud you for just inviting and engaging in this conversation. And for an hour and a half together, that's a long time. I'm going to really try and be as engaging and as obviously to bring you as much value as possible, all of you. If you can, I'd love to have you turn your videos on. It just gives me, if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to see you there in the windows of the Zoom platform. If you're comfortable, if you're not, I get it. I understand completely, but if you can, it's just fantastic. So welcome. And the process will be me sharing a lot of information with you, but we're going to have some small group discussions as well, try and make it engaging. And so in that context, I'll ask Chris, who's kind enough to drive the slides for me, to bring up the session purpose. And just want to clarify and talk about that a little bit. So we have this continuous challenge, obviously, with very different circumstances. And I just want to make a quick comment to say it's International Women's Day, and I particularly want to acknowledge the the women, the unbelievable, courageous women of Ukraine, and all Ukrainians, of course, but as they try and navigate their families towards some form of safety, it's just unbelievably appalling what's going on there, as we all know, and I'll just leave it at that. But coming back to your world, where you woke up this morning, the continuous challenge will always be, how do you attract and retain a workforce? In your case, you've got such low unemployment, 3% and 2%. So these are just like literally almost full employment numbers. So the circumstances, it's a continuous challenge, but the circumstances are the same. And of course, the most beautiful and wonderful thing, if I understand your counties as just an arm's length way, is that it's just a wonderful, wonderful place to live and to have a full life and to raise a family. So you've got that incredible attraction, but at the same time, it's become more expensive. Yeah, I think your average to buy a house, it's about $275 a square foot. You know, if you're renting a 2-bedroom apartment, you're north of, you know, somewhere $1,500 a month. And so this is just an increasing challenge that you well know about. So we want to talk about that and hitting that on. But I think if I've read some of the literature around studying journalists and others that have studied your situation, I think there is a conclusive view that you've got to do something different and better about the place of work, creating an almost extraordinary workplace in order to add to the equation. It doesn't solve the issue of housing, but it does add to the creativity around how might people want to stay and be part of your workforce. So we're going to talk about, at the same time, there's this continual challenge around, you've got to get an increased contribution of teams and individuals. I mean, you hire people so that they can create value for your customers or wherever they are. So we're going to talk about being intentional about your culture, strategies to do that. So whether you have less than 10 people in your organization, many of you have, or you're a larger organization, the information I'm going to share with you is totally applicable. The circumstances and the ingredients around how they're applied will be unique. But I'd love you to leave here inspired, committed to taking some additional steps. Many of you already are, around creating an extraordinary culture, perhaps even magical one. And then the lineup measurement I'm talking about is pretty simple. People are either lined up at your door to be work for you or to be a customer, or they're not. And what our objective is to talk about, how do you end up finding a way so that people are lining up? They want to be there. They want to be part of your brand, your experience, who you are. So as always, I'd like you to think big, start small, but act now. And hopefully when you leave this session, you'll be inspired and also given some very tactical things that you can act. I'm going to share a ton of information. So it's starting small, maybe doing a couple things that will resonate with you that you'll be able to want to go forward with. Okay, that's kind of the flow. So we're going to talk a little bit about what culture is. I am really going to challenge you on your mindset. And we're going to have fun playing a little bit of a spoof on the Korean hit, the Squid Game. Obviously, you want to be careful about when we talk about that, because there's a very kind of dark side to that particular series, if those of you who watched it on Netflix. But I want to kind of just bring out the fun side of that, just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. We're going to have some breakout room discussions later on. We're going to actually start with a very short group discussion here in a minute. But then we're going to talk about now what? What are the strategic and tactical actions? And how might I put myself in your shoes so I can think about it around your situation and give you some, hopefully some earned wisdom that you can put to work. Okay, that's the flow. Just a little bit more about who I am. I've been the CEO of a couple companies. And I've lived for 30 years in the US, became a US citizen. I was born in Canada, so I'm both a Canadian and an American citizen. We still get to keep both citizenships here in this country. We have a son in Austin, daughter and her family practices law in Seattle, and then another daughter who lives here in this part of the world, although she and her family spend most of their time in the UK, so we're happy to have them close. I have had, I just started a couple businesses up. I think when you get to your 70s is a great time to start a business. But I had a small business many years ago, and I both worked for the chair of a Fortune 50 company as one of 7 people reporting to that company. We had 60,000 people. And I've been the chief operating officer of NASDAQ traded technology company. I've had to run businesses on 10% margins and on 70% margins. And all I can tell you is I wish like hell I'd have gotten banking a hell of a lot sooner, because for me that's a sweet business. But anyway, that's a whole different story. But I want to, when I bring information to you, I want to bring it in the context of having both lived it, tried it. There's nothing I am going to share with you today that I have not done myself, and then I try to support it with as much social science as possible when I teach my Harvard classes, for example, obviously. And I also teach an MBA program here in Canada, that these students are very are not shy about, show me the data. And so I want to say that if I'm sharing something with you, it's got some social science behind it that hopefully reinforces it as well. Okay, enough about me. You can find out lots of me. I'm on socials and on LinkedIn and everywhere else. I'm very open with my participation on social media. So before we get going, just so that we can kind of give you a chance, Chris is going to put you into about, depending on how many people we have, 5 or 6 groups, just for 5 minutes, And I just want you to share with each other, who are you? And why did you show up here? What do you hope to get out of this session? Just 30 seconds from each of you. So the person that's lived in either Columbia or in Greene the longest can start the conversation. So who are you, and what do you hope to get out of this session? 5 minutes only, in subgroups. If you've not been in Zoom, it's a little crazy. Chris will just assign you to a room. All you have to do is to just join that room, and then about a minute before the time up, you'll see a notice on there. It'll count down. And just sit there and wait for that to end, and you'll get swooped back into the big group, and we'll have a little bit of conversation at the end of it, and then get on with the program. Okay, Chris, let's see how everybody does on the group. Who are you? What do you hope to get out of this? Way to go. Saying hello to each other this morning. There you go. Have fun. See you in 5 minutes. Nice job, Chris. Looks like Teresa, Mary, Sylvie, they might have walked away from the computer for a bit, or perhaps.
Yeah, we've got everybody assigned. They just, there they go.
There they go.
Okay.
Yeah. How you doing, Teresa? It's a great aspect of the Zoom platform. I use it all the time.
Yeah, the technology is really amazing. It's odd to think how we lived before this was ubiquitous, right? Having access to something like this just at your fingertips and so readily has changed the way that we do business. And it's really interesting to see to think about what it was like when I'd have to drive, an hour and 15 minutes to go to a meeting in Albany, right? It's bizarre.
And you know what, Chris, let's face it. I mean, if it wasn't for a platform like this, the chances of me going all the way and spending time with people would be very unlikely. It wouldn't be practical. It wouldn't be cost effective for any of us, right? And wow. I mean, I could be doing this from Hong Kong. And I had a session the other day, and I had people from Australia and Hong Kong, and there's no way they're going to fly in for a 4-hour session, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So it's been a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm. And we did so much testing yesterday and on Friday to try to just get everything running smoothly. And I just realized I had my breakout room timer set for 30 minutes. So I had to quickly change the
Have to
timer
scramble
setting.
that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's worked really, really well. The Zoom has been, I've had a little bit of difficulty with some of the other platforms, but Zoom has been just really, really easy to use.
Yeah, it's been rock solid for me most of the time. Touch wood, right? I don't want to say anything about today, but yeah, and in all my Harvard sessions, I'm hardwired in here, right? So I like to do it from this platform. And hi, Claire, how are you this morning?
We have
You're on mute. Sorry. You have to unmute, Claire.
oh, okay, yeah. I might be able to unmute you from here.
Okay.
Oh, shoot. Maybe you should be able to unmute yourself. Let me just make sure I don't have the settings set to where you can't unmute. A lot for this. Okay. So yeah, I don't know. You should be able to unmute. The settings should said that you should be able to. We have everybody in breakout rooms for another minute, so they'll all be back and we'll get started. I don't know if it's worth it to send you.
Yeah, it's not. Just hang with us, Claire. We'll just hang out with you till your buddies come back. They're just answering the questions around who are they and why did they what do they want to get out of this session? So just a quick kind of just giving people a chance to get warmed up a little bit. Morning, Mary. Can't hear you either. I think you guys are on mute, both of you. So, hey, Mary, can you just try some? Can you unmute? Does it work if you try and unmute your own button?
No.
Okay, Claire, it doesn't work for you either, huh?
All right. So I'll let's see if I can allow for. Oh, okay. You should be try now. See if you guys can unmute now.
There
okay,
you
there
go.
we go. I had the wrong box
Mary.
checked.
Morning.
Hopefully they can unmute in the breakout rooms, right?
That would be a little snafu.
I guess we'll find out, 5 minutes of awkward silence for everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a little box that said host is not allowing participants to unmute themselves or whatever.
Right.
And it's a more clever person. I was thinking, if I take a screenshot of that, can I put that in the chat box for you? But I thought I better not get too fancy. I apologize for my lateness. I had another call that spilled over, as they are wont to do, but I'm very glad to be with you now. Thank you.
Great to have you. And we're just getting going, Claire. So we're just kind of warming up. We're all good. Everybody's coming back right away.
All right, everybody should be coming back. All the rooms will close in 30 and 50 seconds. So everybody should be on their way back.
Oh yeah, I see even some of my colleagues. Excellent. Thank you.
I am going to mute everybody's mic though, and they can unmute if they need to say anything.
That'd be great.
All right, 5 seconds till they kick everybody out of our breakout rooms.
We're now in the main section.
Okay, everybody should be back one. Oh, hold on, Lauren, you're still muted.
Just want to give you all welcome back, everybody. Thank you. Just want to give you a minute. Anybody from any one of the groups want to quickly share? We won't do a large roundtable. Just want to get a quick reaction. Anything pop up in your group that you just might want to share with your colleagues.
Well, in our group, we discussed really just kind of the turnover and staff that had been there a long time kind of moving on, and then also people who work in healthcare, that just the burnout, and then how hard it's been to recruit people into that field.
Yeah, I'm on a board committee of large healthcare here in Western Canada, and I understand the pain of that healthcare issue at a board level anyway, for sure. And just this great resignation thing about this burnout, this leaving, this I get it. We'll try and hit that on as much as possible. Other reactions from any other groups?
Our group spoke about the lack of a workforce. And we also spoke about that people really want flexibility in the jobs that they take. They don't want to work a consistent schedule. They would like to kind of each week design it a way per their work life. Instead of saying, you know, I'll work this consistent schedule and then work their personal life around the work life. It's now the opposite.
Jamie,
So-
that is such an insightful comment, and I'm really going to challenge all of you to rethink flexibility.
Yeah.
I know that it's a little hard to swallow, you know, when most of us grew up in homes where, you know, my dad went on a shift, and the idea of him thinking about having any flexibility, I mean, that was like a foreign concept. He was just grateful that he had a job. And that world has changed dramatically. So flexibility, we're going to hit that right on to have. I'm going to challenge your mindsets on flexibility, because if you're old school on this one, you're going to struggle, frankly. Okay, wonderful. Any other thoughts?
Lauren Reed, I invited my group to think about, or asked them about the concept of apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is huge these days in our president's funding strategies in regards to how to rebuild workforce. But to have a successful apprentice, we also need to have mentors. And in relationship to what we just heard the last speaker say about people wanting to the retirement process, who will be the mentors? So if you have strategies around any of that kind of concept to encourage them to stick around long enough to be mentors, maybe apprentice would work. But if we don't have mentors, we can't have even that structure of apprenticeship won't work in our state. So
yeah, I think that's a really important aspect, the whole apprenticeship, community college strategy that the administration has, all that support for that. Who can be a mentor, though, if no one's around to share their wisdom? And we're going to talk a little bit about that again, which comes back to some maybe different ways of thinking about flexibility, and different ways of thinking about what retirement even means these days. Okay, let's jump in. So what is culture? It's a little bit of a mushy term. However, I do want to say that in most organizations right now, most leaders and board members are asking the question. So we're going to try and bring a little bit more definition to it. If you just go back to the previous slide for a minute, Chris, I just want to have you imagine, though, when you were a little kid and the first time that you left your actual home, maybe by yourself, you might have been, I don't know, 5, 6 years old. And maybe it was a friend's house or a cousin's house. But maybe it was that first time that you went over maybe to play or to have lunch, or even if you were brave, but your first sleepover. And do you remember what it was like when you walked in? Let's assume it's the back door of the house. Let's think about it more of a North American context. What did that feel like? What did you do with did you wear a jacket? Did you hang it up, or did the person you were with, did they just kind of throw it in the corner? What did you do with it? Did you wear your shoes? Did you take them off? Where did you play? Could you play upstairs or downstairs if there was a downstairs, or could you have to play outside? Could you make noise, or did you have to be quiet because somebody was sleeping because there was shift work going on? What did you smell in the air? What was the cooking that was going on there? How different was it from your house? How did it smell and feel different? What was the air like in there different? What reaction did you get from the adults? Were you ignored, or you embraced, or something in between? All those things that you were trying to assess essentially was the culture of that home. And when someone is in your organization and comes to it new, that's kind of the first question we ask when we arrive, right? We had our interviews. I know we talked to people, but we kind of ask what the hell, how do things get done around here? What's really important? What's not? And we kind of pick that up. Sometimes it's explicit, they're stated, and they're quite well communicated. Oftentimes they're nuanced. So what I want you to think about is your culture, to be very thoughtful about what it is, to be intentional about it. And so going back to the next slide again, this is Ben Horowitz, who's co-founder and partner of Andreessen Horowitz, one of the top venture firms in Silicon Valley. You know, they Facebook, Lyft, you name it, but they've had some stinkers too. And it kind of drove Horowitz to write this book around, what you do is who you are. Culture is the collective behavior of everybody in your organization. From a venture point of view, he's come to learn painfully that a toxic culture will ruin your business. So I don't care if you're putting down a lot of money and you're hoping for a 10-bagger, like people like Andreessen Horowitz are, or you've painfully started a business, or you've taken it over from your father or grandfather or whatever it is, a toxic culture will ruin your business for sure. The flip side is true, though. We'll come back to some of the data on the other side as well. Okay, next slide. So there's lots of stuff. A lot of people who are writing about this. These are just some of the popular books out there, but it's all about the behaviors that drive your outcomes, right? It's and if you go another slide in, it's let's take a look at some of the reason why it matters so much. And this is a busy slide. I'll let you focus on it for a minute. I'm not going to read it all, obviously, but there are three aspects to this. Again, I'm talking about whether you've got the Subway franchise or you've got a farm implement and manufacturing company or whatever you've got, you're in the public sector, one way or another. When you have a thriving culture, the data is you just create more value. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's intuitive sense. On the other side, and why boards are really becoming more aggressive in confronting in public companies and private companies, but public companies for sure, asking CEOs to talk explicitly about their cultures because of risk. By and large, when you have a toxic culture, even if you only have it in a couple places in an organization, bad things will happen. It depends on how bad it is. I mean, you can argue Boeing certainly knows how the hell to make airplanes. They've been doing it for, a couple hundred years or whatever. 100 years. But when they had the 737 MAX issue, was that a quality issue? Of course it was. But what really was the root cause? The root cause, a lot of people believe, was that a deterioration and a massive toxicity in that particular work group for that was a culture failure. And you can go on and all the egregious stories out there that when they happen, they're by and large a massive, somewhere there's a root cause, there's toxicity in the culture. Amy Edmondson, who's the famous Harvard writer and researcher on psychological safety, has a quiet organization. It can be a dangerous organization. And there's a lot of truth to that. So on the other side, though, a thriving culture, you're more adaptable. And again, that makes intuitive sense. You're able to move more because you've got kind of a resident growth mindset around how you work together. Anyway, so the data is, look, there's more data next slide, and we'll just slip through it. The point is there's, we've gone beyond, culture's been talked about forever. It always will be. Everybody has a culture, but the intentionality that consideration is being given to it right now is at a peak. And I think it'll just continue to grow from this as we get more experience around how to grapple with this mushy concept and make it more real. And so again, the next slide that Chris will go to is that it's really a reflection of your leadership. And that can be a little bit painful for those of you that are here that are on the top management teams. Again, whether you're a 10-person company or 100, 500,000 person company, your culture is a reflection really so much also of your company leadership. Because leaders are given the privilege to be able to drive the resources of the organization, people, technology, and money. And so if you are what you do, so much of the tone is set by leaders. And so when we talk about culture, you've got to also be thinking about your leadership system. And I'll dig into that a little bit more completely as we go on. So next slide. We're now going to have a little bit of fun. And this is intended to be totally just a fun thing. I want to challenge your current mindset about work and culture. And this is not comprehensive. I could probably add about another 50 or so assumptions to this. But I want to just have you just reflect a little bit around some historical assumptions. And I'm going to just use the Squid Game as a little bit of a Squid Game is about, I won't get into it, but more of the idea is that we're going to play red light, green light. And in a fun kind of way, I'm going to put a proposition out to you, an assumption. And I'm going to ask you to, in your head, would you make that a green light? In other words, do you agree with that assumption that I put forward? or a red light, you disagree with it. So we're gonna pose the assumption. Chris is gonna give about a 15-second pause, and then the next slide you'll see will be green or red, which is my position on it. And then we're gonna zip through in about 20 minutes. We are gonna go lightning fast through a lot of slides. Okay, ready to go? Squid Game. People are the most valuable resource at work. Give you a couple seconds. Green light or red light? Red light. Holy cow. So why would I say red light? Because I want you to think a little bit differently. This is highly nuanced, but yet it's very tactical and strategic. What would happen if you thought of people as the source at work? The source. Now, to get a little bit of more credence to this, if you read Hubert Joly, who now is on the actual full-time faculty of Harvard, he's the former CEO of Best Buy, and he wrote a really interesting book around how he turned Best Buy around. And he talked about part of their success was starting to think about people as the source at work versus just being a resource. Now, I'll come back to that a little bit more. Let's go to the next one, Chris. The primary objective for leaders is to get meaningful results. What do you think? Green light or red light? Well, I also want to get you to think about this a little bit differently, because I'm saying that it's red light because I think the primary objective of great, not perfect leaders is an and. You've got to get meaningful results and you have to develop others. Now, this goes a little bit to the question about mentorship, to the question about apprentice, to the question about people arriving in your organization, that you have a responsibility not to just think about them as a resource for transaction, but they are the source, but you also have a responsibility to develop them. Okay, let's go to the next one. Psychological safety, which is the idea of being able to bring your full and authentic self, to speak your mind in a respectful way, to think about think about mistakes as learning, to show up and be your real kind of complete self, is the unique differentiator of high performing teams. It's the unique differentiator. Green light or red light? It is. So there's a very well-known study. If you just want to go back for a minute, Chris, a little bit right there. Yeah, there's a well-known study. New York Times has a site. You can find it there, but also you can go deeper into Google. Project Aristotle, also Amy Edmondson's work at Harvard, who I've mentioned before. But there are a number of factors, about 6, that make a high-performing team. But the number one differentiator, whether you've got a sales team, a bunch of engineers, people working in a restaurant, healthcare nurses, the number one differentiator, whether the team is great or kind of about average, is psychological safety. It's the number one differentiator. Okay. A lot of people now think it's just a trend and that it lowers standards, and it's something you pay attention to if you can afford to. My argument is you cannot afford to pay attention to this. And it's very typically nuanced and subtle. Not very many leaders anymore go berate the hell out of people, although there's still plenty of those around, unfortunately. Oftentimes, this is kind of very nuanced. It's like raised eyebrow, kind of a snicker, what do you know anyway? It's a whole, but this is an important subject for you to be more aware of and understand. Okay, next. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, which has been over the last couple of years, for a variety of inflection point reasons, has taken on an enormous consideration in organization and must be a priority in every organization. Green light or red light? And I made this a red light, and I'm going to explain why in a second. So if you want to go to the next one, because I added the word belonging. Now, the reason is, and I'm doing a lot of work in this, diversity, equity, and inclusion are hugely important. Yes, you must Doesn't matter if you're a small business or you're a larger business or a medium. You've got to be thoughtful about these aspects, but belonging is what makes it real in the organization. So I just want to explain that for a minute. The next slide. Diversity is a fact. You either reflect what's happening in the Columbia-Greene counties or not. Equity is how you apply that mix. It feels like, so pay equity or the way people are treated, there's equity there. It's the fairness. And by the way, people are asking that not only for equity around what you stand for inside your organization, but also your stance on social issues outside of your organization. And that's an emerging trend. And you've just watched the Ukraine-Russia situation. There's enormous pressure, for example, on Starbucks and Pepsi and Coke and WeWork and those people that can continue to do business in Russia to examine their conscience there around what they're doing. But that's, again, a whole nother. Inclusion is applying your mix, but belonging is when people feel valued and part of the mix. And that's what you're searching for. So yes, you may represent a minority group just by your nature of your identity, and you're part of the diversity question. But the question is, do you really feel like you belong and value and you're part of the mix? That's when we start to go for belonging. And that applies to every single person, regardless of their diversity, which is also psychic diversity and every other possible diversity. Okay, a little treatise on the notion of belonging and why it's so important. Next one, Chris. So belonging is much more than a feeling and an outcome, and it can be intentionally developed. Is that a green light or a red light? Belonging is more than a feeling or outcome and can be intentionally developed. Green light or red light? It's a green light, yeah. And I'll tell you why, because when you apply the following next process, if you connect with people, look, for example, if you can't write down, I'm just going to say this right now, if you can't write down the names of the people that work with and around you, of the people that that work with and around you, of the people that they care about, their partners, their pets, their children, where they like to hang out, if you don't know something about them as human beings, you have not connected with your team. So connection before content. Can people contribute? Do they feel like they're more than transaction? Do they feel like they're really important, that they're vital, that if they left, that you'd miss them? Are they clear about what they're supposed to do? How do they make the purpose of your organization more true? And are they difference makers? And they continue to advance and grow? That's what the Belongify system is that we talk about. But belonging can be intentionally developed. And if you don't think about it and start to work on it, you're going to miss the boat. Okay, next one. A lot of people that are numb on this think that it's just a feeling and outcome, and we don't really have time for that. It's a mushy kind of thing. Belonging is just a it's that kind of psychobabble of academics that are just have nothing better to do. That's nonsense. Makes a difference to your performance. Okay, next one. No results equals no job. Green light or red light? Okay. Yeah, darn right. I'm real explicit about this. Look, we're not talking about mush here. At the end of the day, you're talking about the end. You've got to create value, and you've got to create it as an institutional level, an organization level, and individuals have got to show up that they have a responsibility to be all in and to create value and to know explicitly for everybody, no results means no job. That's not being mean. Brene Brown, those of you who know, is quite well written and published author and researcher, says that clarity is kindness, and it is. This is a no BS kind of a thing. You can be compassionate and highly involved and highly evolved as a leader in an organization. But at the end of the day, people got to understand no results equals no job. We need to be clear about that. There's no free ride out there for anybody. I don't care if you're in the public sector, you're going to lose your tax support or whatever, or you're just trying to survive as a business. No results equals no job. Be clear about that. Next. In purpose-driven organizations, a lot of people believe that results are not as important as effort. That's craziness. You can be highly purpose-driven and effort and results need to go together. One drives the other. So it's not like, hey, we tried hard. And if you're not creating any value, you're not gonna be around for long. Okay, next one. Connecting before content must be a strategic imperative. Look, when I do my, I'm just gonna do a quick time check to see where I am in my process here. When I do when I finish, I'm into my 8th Harvard class. And I kick off the MBA program here at a large university in Western Canada. When I finish my sessions, this is also with my clients, when I ask them what concept was the stickiest and stuck with you the most and made you think differently, it was the notion of connecting before content, that it's strategic. It is not just being a nice person. It's a strategic, respectful consideration of human beings. And I'm going to dig into this a little bit more. It's so enormously simple, but it's not simplistic. So connecting before that must be a strategic. I guess I gave it away. It's obviously a green light. The red light thought behind it is connect before content. What are you talking about? Get to work. Shut up. And some people still have that view that they can't see the human being in front of them. They go right to content, right to what should be done. They look past the fact that it's a human being that delivers the experience, the work, the process, and that you've got to see and connect before you get to fully engaging the application of that human being. Okay, next one, Chris. For commercial organizations, the order of focus and the fiduciary responsibility is shareholders first, customers second, and people. Is that the order? Green light or red light? I think that's a red light. Look, I've been around and around this over and over again. The green light concept is this, is the order is got to be, and we could argue about this, and I'm telling you, I've had some fierce discussions about it, but I'm now convinced that the data is people first, then your customers, if you have customers, the next person to process the customer, and then your shareholders. Yes, Canadian law and American law are a little bit different. And Canadian and American law, it's a little bit more explicit that boards are there to support shareholders first, but that is outmoded thinking. And more advanced organizations understand it needs to be in this order, because you cannot have happier, your customers cannot be any happier than the people in your organization. If you've got pissed off nurses that are exhausted, how the hell are you going to get well looked after patients? If you've got people at the front line are slamming their plate down and they're mad at somebody and they've got a fight in the kitchen, how are you going to have happy customers? How are you going to translate into money? So if you don't think about it, people first and then customers and shareholders, I think you're going to get yourself on the wrong side of the strategic and tactical thinking. Okay, next one. Leaders that get results, okay, they get numbers, but they have a lower than 75%. In other words, if you went to people and you said, I would recommend that leader to a friend or to my child or to my sister or brother, they should be removed if they're less than 75%. And I picked an arbitrary number there. Yes or no? Green light or red light? So my argument is that you should remove them. And I know that sounds a bit harsh, and I took an arbitrary number there, but my point is that you cannot afford to have toxic leaders in your organization. Now, and if you think you are doing yourself a favor because someone gets good numbers, but they treat people like hell, you're living in a fool's paradise. You just are. It's just a matter of time that that's going to unravel. It's just a matter of time. And particular in your environment now where people have choices, no one's going to put up with that. And if they do, they're there for the wrong reasons. They're there because they're afraid, not because they're driven by contribution. So think about that. You've got to have leaders that people are get good results and people want to work with them. They want to line up to work with them. Okay. The red light concept there, role of leaders to get results. And who cares if they are recommended or not? It's not a popularity contest. If that's your mindset, then I think you should forget about trying to think about building a good culture. You're not going to have one. You're going to get good results for a period of time, but it's going to be transactional, and you're never going to create anything of any other than you'll probably make your numbers It's not sufficient. Okay. This is intended to be a bit provocative because, you know, I'm not suggesting that this should apply to someone who's got a shift where they've got customers there and they walk away. But any employee getting a haircut between 9 and 5 p.m. should be disciplined. Red light or green light. So obviously, I'm trying to make a point there, red light. The idea that, particularly with knowledge workers, like if you've got someone who's worked on something, they've worked 10 hours or they've just pounded away and they want to go take a break and they go get a haircut or they go get their nails done or they want to go for a walk in the middle of the day. In the old days, you saw someone and you go, oh, what are they doing? What are they doing? They should be working. That is outmoded thinking. If you're still stuck in that mindset around thinking about place being a time, and now I'm not talking about people that have got a shift for customers. That's different. However, they do want flexibility on that. And you've got to think differently. And that wonderful point that was made earlier in the thing is that even though you've got shifts and customers showing up, people want to be able to kind of integrate that in their personal lives. You got to think differently about it. You can't say, well, that's all we do around here. If you do that, you're narrow your possibilities of attracting top talent to your organization. Next. People need to be self-accountable to achieve good results and values. For knowledge workers, work is more than a time and place. But think about that for everybody. Work is more than just a time and a place when you've thought about it. Punch in the time clock, show up for your shift. I don't care if your daughter has got to go, has a play. I don't care if you've got to take a sick kid. I don't care. Show up, do your work, shut up. And this is not Disneyland. That kind of more draconian thinking, even if it's not said explicitly, but it's in the quietly back of the head, you're going to come from the wrong place, and it's going to keep you more narrowly defined as an organization and as a leader. Okay. People at work need to be measured on value and output while living purpose and values versus activity and time. Green light or red light. People need to be measured on value and output versus activity and time. Yeah, obviously green light, I'm making a point. It's about what value they bring, how much they make your purpose and mission more true. Of course, part of that is measured in EBITDA or in other kind of financial ways, but it's also measured through customer return, share of wallet, all the other measurements from a customer point of view, if you are a commercial enterprise, or a value contribution, if you're a company like Chris and Danielle's organization that measures your satisfaction with their contribution. It's about the value that is brought. And if you're just thinking about the last person in the parking lot, the hard worker, boy, they're great. You're thinking about the wrong things. One reason for promoting XX is because they work really hard. First car in the parking lot, last one out. We need more people like this. That is nonsense thinking, and it's too limiting, too narrow. Yes, we value people that work extra hard. Of course we do, but that's not the defining difference around whether they're really making any value. They just may be caught up in activity and may create a lot of dust. No hat, no cattle, maybe. Huh? Okay. People with longer tenure deserve more time vacation. Green light, red light. That is a red light. That old time thinking again around, look, no Gen Z is going to come and work for you and said, I want to go on vacation and I'd like to take 3 weeks, assuming that we get to travel again more normally. And I'd love to go to Europe. And you go, you're going to have to work here for 10 years before you get 3 weeks. It's just not going to work. It's just not going to work. So people need to refresh, re-energize, effectively integrate work and life based on their unique needs, regardless of tenure. Tenure brings rewards, but the old ways of the longer you're here, the more golden handcuffs you get. That is outmoded thinking. It's not sustainable. Okay, next one. People work past 8 p.m. should be discouraged from doing so. Green light, red light. Be careful. Don't make judgment there. I've had people work for me that they're late starters in the morning. They like to get their kids off to school. Now, this is a work rule that they could do this. They like to get there. A lot of times they didn't get into their actual work day until 9 or 10 o'clock. but they were there. They would work from 8 to 12 and we're happy at midnight and we're happy to do it. And they made tremendous value, got a huge result. So you're not paternalistic. You don't want people working all the time, of course, because that's not sustainable either. But just be careful about your judgment around putting rules that are paternalistic or maternalistic that don't make any sense. Okay. Be self-accountable and work when and where you need to get the best outcomes. That's the message. Okay. Some last thoughts. The key to keeping top talent is a golden handcuff strategy. Green light or red light. That's a red light. It just doesn't make any sense. You want people quitting on the job so they can hang around and get your for some benefit that is hanging out there. And that's why some benefit plans are not sustainable, because that's the mindset that used to be appropriate back in the 50s is not appropriate now. The idea of trying to keep you want people to stay because they want to, not because they have to. The last thing, the most demotivating thing is someone says, why are you here? Because I have to, I can't get another job. What else am I going to do? Boy, what a great motivational statement. Or, hey, the benefits are too good here. I can't leave. Really? Okay. For knowledge workers, hybrid and remote working is a privilege. Green light or red light. It's red light. Please don't think of it as a privilege. Think of it as a reality around the world we're moving into. Look, there's a reason that Google and Facebook and Amazon have had to change their views on this. When the pandemic started, it was going to be, we're going to be back in the office and everybody's going to be in and we're going to have them back. And Jamie Dimon, from Morgan Stanley or whoever the hell, yeah, they're going to, and he still has a view, I think. But generally, they're all changing their views because no one's going to do it. No, anybody's had this experience for at least for the last couple of years and they can do it. They're going to come in, of course, because they still want to. They still want some human interaction sometime. But just the idea that we're going to have, quote, return to work and everybody has to be in. Now, again, depending on your business, a little bit different. But think about that flexibility as an advantage, not as a restriction. But don't think of it as a privilege, because if not, you're going to be considered old school. There are some recruiting companies right now, if you don't have a hybrid strategy, they will tell you up front, don't ask us to try and find talent for you, because we're not going to. We're just not going to. So one way to think about your place of work and your workforce in Greene and in Columbia is to think about expanding the boundaries beyond the counties. Does everybody have to work from inside your business? Or can they come from elsewhere? Even though you'd love them to live and work in the community, does that make sense in all your jobs or not? Or can you really change that definition? Do you really have to see them face to face, or platforms like this that are not perfect, that you can see them occasionally face to face, but you can really make it work in another environment? Okay, last thing, be realistic and leave digital fluency to millennials and Gen Z. So you shouldn't know anything about TikTok, or you shouldn't even bother knowing what Twitch is, or all these things that are the fancy digital fluency tools. Leave those to the millennials and Gen Z. Green light or red light? Red light. If you haven't got a growth mindset, if you're not thinking about yourself being digitally fluent, and I'm not suggesting that you need to be on TikTok, but if you don't know about it, you're leaving yourself behind. You've got to understand, you've got to be digital technologists around and have a growth and disruptive mindset. You need to be digitally fluent. Now you can really leverage different intergenerations, right? A boomer will think about applying a digital platform in a little bit clumsy and different way than a Gen Z or a millennial, but they bring other things in together, the mix, but everybody's got to move. You've all got to be able to work these platforms. You've all got to be able to think digitally. And if not, it doesn't matter how much your business is a face-to-face business. Amazon Prime sets the tone and experience for customers these days. Okay, last, in order to protect the organization, we're getting to the last ones, lock people out of their systems and walk them out when we let them go. Green light or red light? Big red light. Leaving people, the way people leave your organization is very important as the way that they join them. And old-minded thinking about leaving and just kicking people from behind and walking them out the door is, yes, there are egregious situations. Someone steals something, then they should have the justice applied accordingly, or if they hurt someone, then they should be unceremoniously fired and walked out the door. But in most cases, leaving is a horrible experience. And if we don't make it more dignified, then that it impacts the why people want to come and work for us and stay with us. Okay. And then next one. The way to attack job talent is to guarantee a job. Green light, red light. Don't red light. Don't guarantee jobs. You want to guarantee is growth. That's the next one. Personal equity growth. And I'll come back and talk to that a little bit more. You can't guarantee a job. You don't have an idea how long a job's going to last or not last, or it's going to stay the same. But personal equity growth, you can do something about that. And that could be a huge part of your culture equation. Next one. Gen Z believes in their individual power and the world is at a pivotal moment. Green light and red light. Boy, that's a green light. 52% of them are involved in charities. 42% want work choice based on purpose and values. 50% volunteer. 40% are very active on social media and all social issues. And 33% have been involved in a protest or march. That's your up and coming workforce. That's who they are. And know that and recognize that. Okay. That's it. Now we're going to do something really quick, a little bit less time than I hope, but we're going to do 10 minutes still, Chris. I want you to go into your breakout groups and just what are a couple of concepts or assumptions that made you pause, that made you want to reconsider? Now, you either maybe agreed with them or disagreed with them, but they made you pause and made you want to reconsider. What are a couple of them in your breakout groups? So 10-minute breakout groups, and we'll come back. And I'm going to say, what do you do about all this? How do you build off these assumptions and where do you go? Okay, have fun in your workout groups. Well, Chris, you think very many people want to punch me up by now, or?
I don't know. I think it's really great. I think sometimes when people don't challenge us to look at our assumptions, we just don't. And I think everybody thinks their culture is sound. Everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. And until you kind of have somebody point it at you, it's difficult to really assess where you're at. So I hope everybody's finding a lot of value in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, Chris. I'm just trying to get people to stand back and pause for a minute and do exactly that around, hey, maybe I need to reconsider some of my assumptions or exactly around, what I think about work and people. And I figured if I don't do that and I just give you pablum, then they can get that out of a book or they can get that out of something. But I'm trying to just nudge a little bit around people, reconsider some of those. And, part of it, I'm being a little bit more provocative than just to get them to kind of react. But I think that's where the healthy conversation comes from, right?
Yeah. And the internal discussions, right? They're going to bring this back, hopefully, to their teams and to the executive leadership and have something to come back with and say, these are the assumptions and these are the challenges that have been brought to us. And if one business really reinvents or rethinks their process on culture, it's worth it to me. Culture is the most important part of retaining employees. And with 2% unemployment, all you have is retention. That's it. That's your whole strategy should be retention.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that, when they come back, I'll kind of then translate this now. Okay, so what do we do about it? How do we think about it? Yeah, how do we act on it? How do we put it to work? So,
yeah.
Any other suggestions or thoughts or?
No, I think it's going really, really well. It's
Nice job keeping up to me on the slides, by the way. Way to go. Really appreciate it.
I was trying not to get ahead, right? It's been but it's worked out really good. It's been really smooth. So yeah, I only set the breakout room for 7 minutes.
That's fine.
Because you said we were a little behind, but
that's
so
fine.
There's like 4 minutes left.
Yeah.
I'm gonna actually mute myself and step away for 1 second.
Yeah, you bet, Chris.
All right, we've got like a minute 40 left in the breakout rooms.
Okay. And I'm only going to debrief for 5, right, Chris? Because we could spend more time on it because otherwise we just won't get through those what do we do next kind of concepts, right? So
Right, yeah, no, that's fine. I think the what do we do next stuff is what people really are looking for, like
yeah,
something to bring home, right?
yeah.
But yeah, so that's fine. Just a couple minute debrief is fine. All right, all right, everybody should start coming back in now. They've got 60 seconds before the rooms close on them, but they got the message to come back.
Yeah.
I kicked myself out of this breakout room before I meant to. I saw the pop-up box that it was about to end and I like
That happens all the time. I know.
thought I was getting rid of it or acknowledging it and transferred back. I literally was mid-sentence.
Oh.
We were talking about this idea about around flexibility and
Yeah.
the challenge of trying to be flexible around, for instance, hybrid work in when staff have variable roles, some of which allow for it and some of which do not. So
Yeah.
sort of like how to do that in an equitable way when the nature of the work keeps some people, makes it an option for some and not for others.
Yeah. So welcome back, everybody. Great to have you all back. And Claire, since we were just kind of starting a little bit of conversation, and we're going to do about a 5-minute debrief. We could spend the rest of the half hour debriefing this, frankly, but I'm going to get on to with you some action steps that you can take. But Claire, you want to just kind of reframe that, and I just want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I was reporting that we had an interesting comment in our breakout room about the challenges of allowing for hybrid work in an environment where that is an option for some staff and not for others.
Yeah.
So the nature of their work makes, keeps some people on site where others have that flexibility, and how to do that in a way that feels equitable.
So I had a lot of experience with this at the bank. So we introduced a complete hybrid workforce. Frankly, we let people work from anywhere they want. We had 5,000 people, 80-year-old company in 2012. So we had lots of experience with this. At the branches, it started initially to get to be an issue. Well, how come they don't? We have to open the branch up at 9 o'clock and we can here till 4, blah, blah, blah. And we're working on Saturdays. The issue is providing the opportunity for flexibility. Do not just think about, not every job allows for people to work from where they want to, when they want to. Some jobs you just have to be there. However, the notion about building in flexibility, that's where you want to share the value, but do not get trapped in, well, because we can't be equal to everybody, we're not going to allow it to anybody. That's a scarcity thinking versus abundance thinking. Challenge people to think about how might we, have they considered adding flexibility in the context of where they have to show up. And it may be around being able to do shifts in different kind of ways or other kind of things. People will find the way. People will find a way, but don't get trapped into going, oh, because we can't do it everywhere, we can't do it for everyone. That's nonsense. Other questions or reactions? Now, look, like I said, I'd like to debrief with everybody, but let's just go for a couple more and we'll do about 5 minutes and I'll get into, and anybody else have a thought or reaction other than want to punch me in the nose about some of the stuff that I probably challenged you on, but other thoughts or reactions? By the way, I do want to make a comment. I saw it briefly come up in chat. We had 1,500 people of that in our organization were unionized. I never had an issue with the union ever in any organization, and I've done it in a couple on flexibility. When you start to engage unions on it, their members love it, and it's actually a benefit to most thoughtful union leaders. Other thoughts, reactions?
We discussed, and what I brought to my attention about leaving the agency. You know, typically when we have somebody leaving the agency, we don't have a standard here. And, you know, I liked what you said about leaving with dignity, because it's very uncomfortable when a person decides to leave the agency. And, you know, I've been speaking about how, you know, at our agency, how do we do that? How do we thank somebody for their time and their service and send them out into the world where they're still talking about us in a nice way?
Jamie, that is such the right concept. You know, think about it. You know, well, one of the ways to get there is to have people think about their very last day, their first day. I know that sounds weird, but if you come to an organization, you say look and say, you know, we don't know how it's going to happen here. We are hoping that, you know, we continue to thrive and everything's going to, but the role that you're in, you know, you may evolve. It's likely going to evolve, but it may go away. We may have to ask you to leave one day, or we're going to ask you to stay for as long as you can and do more things. But we promise you that when you leave here, it'll be dignified, unless something egregious happens. So we're going to celebrate what you did. We're not going to walk you out at night. We're not going to turn your computers off under the stupid idea of security when you know that you're going to, if you're pissed off, you're going to put something on Facebook right away when you get out anyway. We want you to leave with kindness and dignity, and we want you to feel like an alumni here. Now, of course, we're going to give you a decent, fair severance package, but that's way beyond that. We want to help you with what you think you want to do next. We want you to give you the email addresses of your friends here. We want you to think fondly. Look, that always doesn't feel good when you have that conversation you've been asked to go, but it's about managing expectations and understanding and being fair and doing it the right kind of way. Jamie, you are on a right track. Keep going. The people that figure this out, that's a huge part, because people are smart enough to know, if I join that organization, what's it like? How will I be treated there? And one day I'm going to be gone. What's that going to be like? We're all going to leave one day. Okay. And other thoughts? Okay, I'm going to use that as a segue around. Here's what I really would like you to think about doing. Here's a game plan for your organization, big, small, medium, whatever in between. And these are, this is my Harvard class in 10 minutes. So if you want to go to the next one, Chris, I want you to think about how might you and be intentional and have you consider two very powerful phrases. How might we have we considered? If you leave here and you start to inculcate your organization with those two phrases, you will help your organization just by that alone. Okay, but here are 10 elements that I believe are absolutely vital that you must have and in your organization. So so these are what I call the 10 integrated organization cultural elements. So these are intend to look like the periodic table, because how you mix them and apply them and the focus and the attention, it's kind of a little bit like baking your own cake, because all your contexts are different. But my argument is that you must have all 10. They work as a system. And when you start working on one, it tends to help another element. And this happens over years, and you have to be relentless on it. So if you start to get real intentional about your culture and you start to put defined action plans in this, on these ingredients based on some insight that you have, you will move your organization forward. It'll move towards thriving, but you'll have to be relentless on it. And you can even get to extraordinary if you do. The very first, and I'm going to go in this order, is you've got to be people first. You have to think that way. People first, people as the source. And I'm going to do a quick zip through, and then I'll come back a little bit more deeper. You must have an inspiring purpose and story. Look, if people don't know what your purpose is, if they don't know what your why, there's a well-known consultant out there, author Simon Sinek, who's made a living on the notion of knowing your why. His work is really important. If people don't know your why, your purpose, they know your what and your how, but they've got to know your why. Why are you really in existence? What are you really trying to do? And then they have to understand how their contribution fits into that purpose, that story. If people don't get this and they can't explain your why, essentially you have a transactional business, and that you cannot build a great culture on that. Look, values have been around and been important forever, but they can be a big gag. They can make you want to throw up too. When you have values that are put on coffee cups and t-shirts that mean nothing, that frankly are done by well-intended HR people or PR comms people at the behest of leaders, but they have no rich meaning and story and examples, it's BS, and people know it. Look, you all have values and you want to have a highly diverse organization, but you've got to have modern, well-stated values with story and narrative behind it that say, this is what's vital around how we get things done here. This is important. So we are highly diverse. We value uniqueness. However, we are bound by these values that we deeply commit to and live to. If you don't have those well understood, they'll get evolved and people will make them up, and there'll be a mishmash of a behavior that's defined by personality rather than the greater good of the organization. Look, you've got a leadership system. You need to be clear about, so this is number 4, about what great, not perfect leadership is. What defines great leadership? Not perfect leadership, but what defines great leadership in your organization? And if you're not clear about that, then frankly, you go and people get promoted for reasons that are often based on some bias. So people have got to get results, of course, sustainable results. They need to have people that want to work with them, though. If there's no lineup to want to work with those leaders, it's because they don't develop anybody. They tend to be ego-driven, command and control leaders, and that's not adequate for you going forward. So what is your leadership system? Which leads to psychological safety and belonging. If you don't invest in psychological safety and belonging in an intentional way, you're going to not be able to advance your organization. Why? Because there are 4 metrics out of a highly a very healthy psychological safety and belonging organization. 1, people learn faster. Why? Because they're not punished for mistakes. People genuinely believe that mistakes and trying things are important. People don't want to make them, but when you do, you learn fast. Secondly, people can show up and be their authentic self. They don't have to be big phonies and start to try and fit in, because fitting in is the wrong notion behind belonging. It's not about fitting in. It's about bringing your unique self towards a common set of purpose and values, but not fitting in to be, quote, a member of the club. You don't have to play golf because the big guys do. So that's the other, is that you have crunchier conversations. People talk about the right things at the right time. And they feel a greater sense of contribution. So all those things are measurements of, so one of the measurements is that as positive, respectful confrontation goes up, because it's sought after, because you've got acute listening and you want people to talk back. And I'm changing talking back to speaking up, because sometimes talking back gets interpreted as mean, crass, radical candor in the wrong sense of the word. I'm talking about people have got to, look, if you've got an issue and you don't find out about it, you're going to have a problem. So you want acute listening, but you want people to speak up in a respectful way, which means everybody has a growth and disruptive mindset. You can't have people in your organization say, well, that's the way we used to do it. We never do it like that. I don't need to learn that stuff. I don't need to be change. As a matter of fact, you want people coming to work thinking about how might we and have we considered making things better, and sometimes even being highly disruptive. And also, in more modern organizations, peer-to-peer power is taking on way more kind of, look, you've got to get people doing things because they're good critical thinkers and they can go and find a way to work with other peers to go get things done. If you've got to go and ask for command and control instructions all the time, you're going to be too slow. You're going to be too slow. You're going to be transactional. You're going to have command and control bosses, and you're going to be too slow. So you've got to drive down peer-to-peer power supported by great, not perfect leadership in a psychologically safe environment, working on the purpose and the story that you really, that really drives you, because you know that people are first. They are your source, not your resource, based on common values, which means you're great at listening. People speak up. People have a growth and disruptive mindset. They work together. They can do things at a peer-to-peer basis because they understand what their purpose and the values are. They know if they make a mistake, you're going to have their backs. And therefore, play and experimentation become important. And they know they're at work because of the last one. They work there to make a contribution. And they know because the longer they stay working in your organization, so what their personal ambitions and growth is going to become more true as well. So it's not a one-way street. So when they do leave, to Jamie's question, they leave saying, I'm so glad I was part of that organization. I became richer in every way, financially, emotionally, psychologically, even physically and mentally. That is a great place. And even if I've got a frontline job, but because of the ability I had to grow as a human being there, I became a full, more complete human being. I'm so glad that was part of my life. So the promise that was made to me is that if I brought my contribution, that I would grow personally and I become richer in everywhere. My personal equity would position me for whatever I want to do next in my life. That's the reason that people want to show up. Make your purpose more true as an organization, but theirs becomes more true as well. If you apply these 10 ingredients, it's easier to say than do. But if you do, I promise you, because I do it, I've done it. I took an organization with a great group of team members, not just me, but because I had a great group of people with me, working with me, a great CEO, but we became the #1 place to work in Canada. We applied these 10 ingredients. I deeply believe in them. And now I'm going to give you, in a very, very a zip through period of time, I'm going to pop each one up and I'm going to give you just 1 or 2 phrases to have you think about each one. So this is going to be a blitz, but I just want to get your thinking on people first. So Chris is going to walk through just a couple phrases behind each. People are more than a resource. They are the source, and connect before content. When we started this session, the reason we just went into those subgroups for a couple minutes so that you could connect as human beings before we got into the content. If you were going to be part of something with me, all of us would spend way more time together, getting to know each other, building bridges before we got into stuff. Because the more bridges that we have between us as human beings, if we can connect before content, we can rely on the strength of those bridges, because we are the source for what the organization needs to get done. Next one. Everybody needs to know the why. So the purpose is most powerful when everyone has a personal, emotional connection to it. You cannot send this out by email. If you don't have a conversation with every single person in your organization on the why, they will never get it. And you will never know how they think about how they connect with it. So this is not okay, someone does this over a weekend, you send it out and it's done. This is a thoughtful commitment. Next one. Your values, modern values, need to be authentic and sincerely resonate with people. If you have one-word values like customer, passionate, respect, rip them up and throw them away. They're just a big waste of time. No one knows what that means. You've got to tell it in stories. And you've got to want people to use that to become better human beings for themselves, not to just judge others. You don't want values to be weaponized. You want them to be embraced around. This is the way we get things done here. I become a better human being when we work this way. I'm a better father, mother, brother, sister, you name it. And this is how we create more value, because we commit to working. And here are the stories when we do it right, and here are the stories when we're not. Next one. Look, leadership is a practice. You've got to continuously develop. If you don't declare this, then your leaders are just going to, they're going to be whoever, Joe likes so-and-so, and people have got to be authentic, genuine in care, and they can't be driven by perfection. They've got to be driven by progress. Yes, they've got to get results, but people have got to say, I love working with so-and-so. Sometimes they're tough-minded, but boy, they help me grow and develop. They care about me as a human being and my personal equity growth. Next one. Look, you've got to know what the conditions for psychological safety are. What creates it? If you don't, you're going to miss out on something because the data is so much behind that. And belonging, remember, belonging completes diversity, equity, inclusion. It's not sufficient. That work's not sufficient until people go, I matter here. I'm part of this. I deeply care. Now, they've got to want to belong too, right? So there's another side. It's not all on leaders. Their individuals must want to and see themselves and show up. And they've got a part to this too. So this is a two-way street for sure. But it's vital. It's important. You need to talk about it. And people need to understand it's part of the relationship. Next one. Look, curiosity is an accelerant for acute listening. Look, you can't be just you can't have a 2-year-old survey and say, you know what's going on with people. Look, if you've got 10 people, you should know daily what the situation is. If you've got a 50, you should know where people are on a weekly basis. With platforms we have today, you should be able to, this idea, but people have got a responsibility to speak up. And you've got to be responsible to listen. But old style of listening and shut up and go to work and you've got no voice is not sufficient. And sitting there on your hands and not showing up is not sufficient either. So what are the modern ways you're getting listening in the organization? And I'm not just talking about surveys. I'm talking about a richer way of understanding where are people at. Next one. Growth and disruptive mindset. Look, if you're not adapting and moving, you're not going to exist for long. So this is be wary of sameness and procrastination. If you're doing same things the same way, or everybody or people say, well, everybody in the industry does that. That's going to be, it's just going to set up for you're not going to have an extraordinary culture. You're going to have a sameness kind of culture. Why would you try to be 5% better than anybody else? How do you start getting people to think about how might we be 10 times better, 10 times better? And procrastination, that's just a signal that you're stuck in the mud. Next one. Peer-to-peer coaching. Look, you can't just rely on if you rely on just the manager to be the developer, you got a problem. Things happen right there in front of peers' eyes, and that's where the action needs to be taken. So this is a way to silo bust. It's an antidote to bureaucracy, is that there's expectation that people can take on greater sense of coaching and responsibility with each other. They're all responsible to make the purpose more true. They have to have the skills to also help each other grow and develop. It means that, look, great hockey teams, any kind of team symphonies, there's a much coaching that goes on between peers and teammates. Not everybody waits between periods at the end of the game for the coaching. It has to happen real time. Okay. Next. Play. You gotta have fun. I know it's like, this seems like a lot, like I am throwing a lot at you. You can't do it all at one time. But you got to have a lot of experimentation. That means you got to have an activated growth and disruptive mindset. But people got to have fun. If people are living in fear, if you run a business based on false perfection, then people are going to turtle, and you're not going to get to where you want to go. You're not going to build a great culture. Next and last, but not least, think of your last day, your first day. Advance oneself and the organization. That needs to be in harmony. I'm here. As I give my all, I grow and become richer. The organization becomes better. It's an advancing, abundant way of thinking for all of us. These 10 elements, if you put intentionality about it, so how would you do it? So next slide. How would you do it? You've got to have some diagnostic. What I would recommend is that, look at Marcus Aurelius, one of the great old Stoics, has got a phrase that always captures my attention. What's in the way is the way. People are the source. So you've got to have some diagnostic. Now this is just straight marketing pitch here. We have a diagnostic, next page, that we go through, and you can take the diagnostic and you get a rating and where you are on the 10 elements. And it gives you a place to start. You don't have to use ours. You can use others. It's only one way. If you've got 10 people, hell, you don't need a diagnostic. And so you need to sit down and go, what's going well, what's not, what do we work on to make this place extraordinary and get that out there. But you need to listen. Where are you right now? Where do you put your attention? Where can you leverage your effort? So what is your next step out of here to go and get more active listening, knowing where to start? Think big, start small, act now. Next one. Let's just go off past this, Chris. These are, I would use a framework like this and build a plan over the next 18 to 36 months. This is free to you. You can use this framework. What I do in organizations, actually, when I have found this most effective, is I spend about 16 hours taking a top 3 team through these in 4-hour increments to dig into understanding where we are on these principles and then to build a game plan going up from there. You don't need to do that. I mean, you sure as hell don't need McKinsey. Though no disrespect to McKinsey, great organization. If you got $2 million in fees, you just need a framework and a system. This one works. I promise you it does. I guarantee it does. It's not a silver bullet in the sense of it's messy and sloppy and clumsy sometimes. But if you keep moving, and remember, it's a system. You can't. You can. They all start to reinforce each other, but you need to pick and choose where your energy needs to be on these. All these 10 need to be activated some way. You'll know what's best for your organization. Have a framework. Think about trying to measure progress over 18 to 24 months. You have to have a picture of if this culture was extraordinary, what would it look and feel like? That narrative needs to be written out in a couple pages. You need to be able to know and have a picture, behavioral picture of what would be different and why, and then use this framework to help you there. And then with 3 minutes left, if for my organization, I belongify everybody. Now, this is the belongify system, but I would make sure we do this in 5 1-hour increments, connect before contact. Everybody knows each other. They have a framework for contribution. We put in a framework for psychological safety, 4 minimum things. Everybody needs to know why they're there and why they are adding value, not just activity. You don't have a great day just because you got through all your email. You have a great day because you made the place better based on the purpose. And your value your role is instrumental in creating more value, not just in activity. And so some places that's very clear. In a restaurant, that's very clear. That's the experience you give your customers, but it's with being with your peers, is all those kind of things. In some places, it's a little foggier. You got to work at it a little bit hard, but you got to feel like you make a difference and you want to continue to advance the business. So wrapping it up in 3 kind of ways are, next slide, think big, start small, act now. So just go back and think about so just going back to the beginning of the session, what are some considerations and some assumptions you need to reconsider? Have your own mini squid game. You don't need to go through all the ones I have. What are some, then where do you want to take this thing? What does extraordinary look like, an extraordinary culture? What does it feel like? What will people be saying about you? What will be the measurements that you would look like? You go, wow, we've really created something extraordinary here. And how do you begin to then frame it up and take some action? So what are the ingredients you need to apply? So you need to listen, find out where you are, pick a couple areas of leverage, think about a framework to help you apply your initiative, and then trust the fact that people are the source and you're going to get there. Be intentional. This is work. This is business. Culture is not something you do. It's as important as your business model, your strategic plan. It is your business. It is. You need to be intentional about it. Go make it so, and you will find that you will attract the people that you need in Columbia-Greene. You will find those people. They will be more committed to making your purpose more true, and you will build something extraordinary. You won't be perfect, but you will. And I hope that I brought some value to you today. I'll let you do a wrap up here as we get to the bottom of the hour. And I'm sorry I buzzed through a whole mass of stuff. We won't give you the whole slide deck, but I will share a couple of pieces of it for you that you can take. And the wonderful Danielle will get into you. Chris and Danielle, thank you very much. I'll turn it over to you to do a wrap on the day.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lorne, and thank you everybody for coming. We hope that this was a valuable 90 minutes for everybody. With the labor market being what it is, we know how difficult recruitment can be for everyone. And anything that we could bring that we think will help you in retention or creating a situation where your business is better able to attract people and keep the people that you have, we're happy to do it. if anybody has any ideas for future workforce roundtable topics, we're open to all suggestions. And I think the big takeaway from our office is that more and more employees and potential employees are customers in the same way that our customers are customers, and they require the same kind of nurturing relationship that we would have with our traditional customers, and the same amount of work that we have to put into keeping and attracting new talent to our businesses is equivalent to the work that we would put into keeping our customers and keeping our businesses alive. And it's so vital to have a quality pool of talent and a nice pipeline. So we hope that this will help you impact and transform your culture. Everybody thinks they have a positive corporate culture. Everybody thinks they're doing a great job. And we hope that this challenges you a little bit to think of, if you do have a great culture, what can you do better? And if you feel like you have maybe a questionable culture, how can you turn that around and bring more talent into your businesses? So again, we thank everybody for coming. Thank you again, Lorne, a terrific presentation. We're very happy to have you. And hopefully everybody has a nice takeaway. Danielle and I will send out the version of the slide deck that Lorne sends us as soon as we get it. And everybody have a great day. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and thanks again. And come to my Harvard class. It's there. It's wide open for you. You'll love it. Anyway, just a pitch. Hang out. Follow me on social. Thank you, Danielle and Chris. Have a wonderful rest of the day and week. And go Ukraine. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Nice to see you.